Egypt. Little under 40 people injured here in Cairo in demonstrations that look very much like the 2011 revolution. Outrage, clashes, and anguish in Tahrir. Thousands of angry Egyptians back in a public square that has become the Arab world's emblem for the democratic right to protest. This was where Egyptians demanded the ouster of former President Hosni Mubarak last year. This time the fury aimed at current President Mohamed Morsi.
We're here because we don't want Morsi to rule us anymore.
It's a one-man show. He wants to do everything, and this is nothing at all of what we want, you know?
On Thursday, the new Islamist president made himself the most powerful man in Egypt by announcing sweeping decrees he says are designed to push forward the drafting of Egypt's new constitution and speed up the formation of a government that's still missing a parliament.
One of President Morsi's decrees bans anyone from overturning any of his declarations since he took over office in June. That order is to stay in place until the parliament is formed. So technically it means for now he can do whatever he wants without any oversight.
I just felt he was telling us, you guys don't exist. It's just me and my people, and there's no place for anybody else in Egypt.
We're not allowing for a dictatorship again. 30 years of dictatorship is enough. Egypt is not going into dictatorship once again.
In a separate decree, Morsi banned the breakup of the Constitutional Assembly, the 100-member panel assigned to draft Egypt's new constitution. Protesters here say the panel favors Islamist factions and ignores demands by liberals, Christians, youth groups, and women's rights groups. Some have sued to dissolve the panel. Morsi's decree forbids that. As nightfall approached, anger turned to violence. In scenes similar to the Egyptian revolution, protesters clashed with police.
We're right along one of the major arteries leading into Tahrir Square. Clashes between security forces and protesters, tear gas, and we're moving away.
As the protests intensified, Mr. Morsi appealed for calm. In a speech to hundreds of his supporters who gathered outside the presidential palace in Cairo, he defended his decrees and rejected accusations of a power grab.
I didn't take a decision against anyone or pick a side against another. I have to put myself in a clear path, a path that achieves a clear goal.
Several hours after Mr. Morsi's speech, his critics were still out here in Tahrir Square, protesting throughout the night, setting the stage for what seems to be an intensifying face-off between the president and his opponents.
And that face-off is taking shape as we speak. One of the presidential advisors has quit in protest, and the Judicial Club has called for a meeting today. This is an organization that represents the top judges in Egypt, including the Supreme Court judges. There are rumors of a possible strike by the judges, which could be incredibly disruptive for this country. A lot of people anxious to see what the coming days bring, Natalie.
In the 1960s, he was an astronaut with Guinea for a wife. In the 1980s, he was a ruthless oil tycoon. This was actor Larry Hagman. He was an icon of American television. He died Friday at the age of 81 from cancer. CNN's Colin McWorth looks back at his career.
Many hats in his career, but is best known for the Stetson that he wore on Dallas. Despite roles on film and on stage, Hagman will always be remembered as the villainous J.R. Ewing.
And you drove Cliff to attempt suicide?
How was I to know he was going to do a dumb thing like that?
When J.R. was shot by an unknown assailant, it became one of the most famous cliffhangers in TV history, watched by 300 million people from all around the world. Hagman never expected the show to endure.
Honey, I just started this show doing 6 shows. I never thought I'd do 300.
In fact, the Dallas franchise was so successful, the series was recently reprised. The U.S. network TNT brought it back with a new generation of Ewings, and Hagman came back too, returning as J.R. once again. Critics say he was the best thing about Dallas. But explaining the character's appeal, Hagman once said, "The time is ripe for a real bad guy, and I'm it."
Have a good day, Master.
Oh, I'm going to have a wonderful day, Jeannie.
It was a good guy who Larry Hagman blasted into people's living rooms, playing astronaut Tony Nelson on I Dream of Jeannie. The show was a hit in the 1960s and is still popular in syndication. Even as a kid, Hagman orbited in showbiz. As the son of Peter Pan star Mary Martin, his movie roles included Up the Cellar and Harry and Tonto.
I don't need an office anymore, Pop. I'm living off the cream now.
It was only after milking a huge contract from the producers of Dallas that Hagman became immensely wealthy. He had houses, he had cars, he had vices. Two of them included drinking and smoking. He smoked for 24 years, gave it up, and became an anti-smoking activist and spokesman for the American Cancer Society.
And I've met at least 30 or 40 people that said they quit because of my personal involvement, which makes me feel really good.
He stopped drinking in 1995 when he was diagnosed with liver cancer and underwent a life-saving transplant.
If we'd won in Vietnam, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Nobody's fault, Jack.
In recent years, Hagman appeared on the big screen in films like Nixon and Primary Colors. But it is his role as the charming and conniving oil man that audiences will never forget. Colleen McEdwards, CNN, Atlanta.
The story of late celebrated actor Larry Hagman there. From there, we go for another short break. The sports news is next. Dozens of players began the journey to claim the title of the best draft player in Banjul. Many of them from the various votes that littered the streets of the greater Banjul area, but it was the Gina Zavanami Imagine Star in Abdou Cissé that signed gloriously in the championship. Our Babakar Sangoro reports. The star of the Dobson votes is a deserving champion of a very competitive championship.
Exponents dominated by Banjul's best, with Dobson's King of the Trade crowned champions of the Modou Fall Memorial Championship. The all-girls school of St. Joseph Senior Secondary was the venue of this round of the Gambia Draft Association Championship. It was a classic venue for the thrilling competition, a perfect tribute to a game which owes much of its success to a steady mind and faultless concentration. The Modou Fall Memorial brought together some of the top performers in Gambia Drought, and the cast was led by the unmistakable figure of Suleiman Norman, a true champion of the game. But on this day, he was led through by a supporting cast of some of the finest up-and-coming players in the game, ably represented by the likes of Abdou Cissé and Pa Bojam, both from the Dobson VU. Dobson Street VU has become a hotbed for the production of top talent, and the members of the VU demonstrated their superiority once again, providing the majority of the players in the last four. The celebrated figure of Suleiman Norman entered the semi-finals against one of the first faces of Gambian draft in what looks on paper as a foregone conclusion in favor of the veteran. The brutal truth is neither player gave in. In this mortal semi-final contest, the pendulum swung back and forth, and in an amazing clash of thought and ideas and style. What later transpired in the contest was an advert for the game in the Gambia. This was not written in the script, as the game was destined for a nail-biting stalemate. Umpire Sambanjai intervened to flag Abdou Cissé winner on time. Unity VU's flag bearer and one of the leading faces of Gambian draft briefly and heartily contested the decision, but the reality is the moment has arrived when a new face and a younger poster image emerges to take this sport to a new exciting phase of its development. Another of Dobson's finest in Pa Bojang gate crashed into the final, upsetting Aruna Jeng of July 22nd VU. Another established name in the game is out. The final game between the two Dobson players was another tense affair. There was little to choose between Bojang and Cissé, but after a first-time stalemate, Abdou Cissé gloriously weaved his magic to win the contest, much to the delight of the many who thronged the venue to watch the final.